we ask ourselves, why is there still a need of ham radios today? With all the recent weather that we've had, especially in May, we've all have heard in the news where weather broadcasters have said the storm spotters have reported winds up to 60 miles per hour, heavy torrential rains with pea-sized hail. We ask ourselves, well, who are these storm spotters? How are they reporting this information to the newsroom so fast, so swiftly? Well, the answer is simple. They are actually reporting it to the National Weather Service, and they are communicating this through a radio. Not in your everyday walkie-talkie radio. They are actually using a ham radio, as you see here. They are required to operate it with a ham radio operator's license, as noted by the ARRL website. That's called the American Radio Amateur website. With that said, let's look at the different building blocks that it takes a storm spotter to get a radio license. And there are 3 different types of licenses. These licenses are your technicians, your general, your extra. Your technician is your local use of radios. You still would use a radio, your local ham radio, but you use it for your local channels that you are assigned. But if you want a wider range, operate it worldwide, you would actually use your general license. That you are able to operate worldwide, both in Hawaii, talk to people in Europe, in London, in South America, or even take it with you and still operate from that location. But let's look at it even further. The ARRL website lists also different types of entities and contracts that they have with other people to operate a certain station or certain frequency. And these are an example, the FEMA, the American Red Cross, as you see here, and as I've mentioned before, the National Weather Service. And these are actually groups or entities that use the ARRL to assist in times of need, in times of disaster, in case, with tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes. But then you also have your media outlets and your government. But let's start with government. The government entities are like the fire department, your police department in the local cities. You also have your Navy, your FAA, which is the Federal Aviation, and other entities that relate to government. They are actually contracted out with the ARRL and the FCC to use these certain types of frequencies that are assigned to. And they are actually use these frequencies, and they give them these licenses to operate off of these. Then you have your media. Your medias are your radios that we hear in our cars, your news stations who broadcast your weather, your favorite TV shows, and other media outlets that we've known and we've heard, such as your Facebook, your TMZ channels, and other entities that use this type of media outlets. Then let's move forward and look at professions. After looking at your different types of licenses, what you can get and who gets them and what they're for, let's look at your different types of professions. I did a search and I came across in the ARRL website the different types of careers that you use that could use a amateur radio license. It ranged from an electronics to technology and even an electrician or an emergency operator as well. But I also did a further research in Google and I came across Indeed. And Indeed.com provided several more jobs that required a radio license. And here we have from California to York County, and even here locally, the city of Grand Prairie. The city of Grand Prairie is looking for a ham radio operator as a volunteer. As you see here, these types of jobs require one of the types of licenses that I've mentioned before. After I've mentioned all of these jobs, let's look at also how to use a radio. I would like to give you some basic knowledge of how to use one of these radios in case of an emergency, should you need one. Just like myself, I never thought in my life I would have to use one of these. Being in aviation and having a position in admin, I never thought I would have to. But I came across a good friend of mine, Blake Haley, who actually taught me how to use one of these. He said the first thing is you want to get to know your equipment, see how it looks like, how you use it, and depending on how it is, because not all of them are going to look like this right here. There are different types of equipment. But on this one is kind of like the one I used in aviation. And basically you have your basic buttons, your battery, how to turn it on, how to turn it off, how to talk to other people and communicate. So, and the next thing you also want to do is, as a ham operator, they are required to give their license number. Once they push the button, they have to say their license number, and then after that, every 10 minutes. Once they do that, they continue on their conversation, but every 10 minutes they repeat their license. But for us, as a safety coordinator or even the police, we are given a different protocol. Depending on who uses it, they provide us that protocol on how to use and operate the radio. The next thing is you want to be clear and concise of your information when talking on the radio. So that person on the other end, or whoever you're talking to, can listen to you and listen to you clearly as it notes here. You want to make sure you want to give that information precise to them. But I would like to conclude is thanking to my friend Blake Haley and letting him know that if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't know how to use a ham radio. He actually got his license since he was 15 years old, and he has had his general license since then and has operated a radio since then. But I would like to also, hopefully in the future, get my own license and pass that information to my 2 boys and for them to learn how to use a radio. Thank you.